This week, we give our driving impressions of the 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness. We share tips and advice for using your car in extreme weather. And should you buy a used car with an open recall? Next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Alex Nizick.
And I'm Keith Barry.
So we're going to jump right in with some news of what's going on in the country this week. And we kind of have a bit of snippets of different things. The first of which is an announcement from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration regarding automated driving. Keith, give us some scoop on what the announcement was.
Yeah, this is really interesting coming from that agency you mentioned, which we just call by its acronym NHTSA. And they've issued an order that's going to require auto manufacturers to report if a crash took place and if the crash took place in a vehicle with an automated system. Automated driving systems. And that can be anything from a prototype of a self-driving car down to a car with lane keeping assist or automatic emergency braking. I mean, that sort of runs the span of basically anything that takes any sort of control away from the driver. And this is basically, it's kind of aimed for two reasons. The first one is that there have been a lot of crashes that have made headlines, mostly around Tesla vehicles, with its well-publicized autopilot system, which is a convenience system. It is not a self-driving car. Even the full self-driving feature is not a full self-driving feature. It's called that. And so far, for the past 4 or 5 years, NHTSA's really been kind of asleep at the switch in terms of keeping an eye on whether these new systems out there were causing more crashes. They weren't even really collecting data. And what they were doing is they were sending out a special team called the Special Crash Investigations Team in order to look at individual crashes that were really high profile ones where someone was killed, unfortunately, or something that was involved a multiple vehicle crash. But now NHTSA is requiring auto manufacturers themselves, once they find out about either from a police report or a complaint or insurance or any other source, within a day, they have to send a pretty detailed form to NHTSA, and it goes into a database. And that database is going to be available not just for NHTSA to study, but also for the public to have access to. So we'll find out if some of these systems are actually helpful. I mean, the first step is collecting this data and being able to find out whether these systems, which are touted as safety or convenience benefits, sometimes both, whether they actually live up to the promise and make roads safer, or if they make them less safe, or which implementations make them safer or less safe.
Yeah, I was thinking, one, that data's got to be critical to answering the question you just said. Is it safety or is it just convenience? Do they have any safety benefits when you're talking about automating some of the driving tasks? And as more and more cars get these capabilities, it's got to be impossible for these crash investigation teams or the National Transportation Safety Board to go out and investigate all of these crashes. So the second item comes from Stellantis. Now, and for those of you who don't know, Stellantis, or the company formerly known as FCA or Fiat Chrysler, I said the company formerly known as Prince prior to, is a combination of Fiat Chrysler and the European group PSA, which was Peugeot and Citroën. So in the United States, it includes Alfa Romeo, Chrysler, Dodge, Fiat, Jeep, Maserati, and Ram trucks. So that is Stellantis. But Alex, give us the scoop on what their announcement was this week as well.
Sure. Yeah. So if you kind of pay attention to, I guess, some automotive news, you'll notice that a lot of companies are announcing plans to switch over to at least majorities of their fleet being either partially electric or fully electric vehicles. Some automakers even committing to, 100% electric vehicles by a certain time period. And Stellantis, I guess is a little later to the party as far as the announcement goes, but in exchange is they have some pretty lofty goals that they've talked about here. So they're planning to, they say they're going to invest like 30 billion euros into this program. And they hope to, at least in the US, have like 40% of the new vehicles be low emissions vehicles, is what they say. And they also detail plans, at least at a high level, for 4 different electric vehicle platforms. So like a small, medium, large, and then a truck platform as well. So that's pretty exciting, and similar to some other automakers like GM, they've got announcement for modular drive units and batteries that they can scale up and down depending on the size of the vehicle and what the vehicle's for. And pretty interesting that they said already that these vehicles are going to be targeting between like 300 and 500 miles of range, which with 300 being, at the low end of the bar there, that's pretty good. And something that excites me a little more personally is they announced that are working on like a alternative battery chemistry, like that uses no nickel and no cobalt, those rare earth metals that are kind of controversial when it comes to making these batteries. So I think that if that comes to fruition, that's a great thing.
Yeah, it sounds pretty well thought out in terms of, like you say, the modular and the different chemistry and EVs for all type of thing if those battery prices come down. On kind of a lighter side, along with their announcement, Stellantis had a lot of slogans, kind of advertising slogans that went along with their announcement, and we were having some fun. So, Keith, I'm going to go to you first. Take one of them. Imagine you're now the PR rep for Stellantis and you have to create a new slogan for their electric vehicles. Share what they have and then what you maybe thought of. I have one.
Oh yeah. I mean, my favorite is, we've got Alfa is now Alfa Romeo. We have heating up people, but not the planet, which just sounds dangerous to me. I know that that's not what they mean. It's about passion. I would say that if I were working in this team, I would have said our cars are green unless you order them in another color. Or, by the time we've cooked the planet, we'll have some new cars. But right now, can we interest you in a Grand Wagoneer that gets 13 city, 18 highway? So really, this electrification can't come soon enough. Or please don't talk about the Dodge Circuit from 2009. It's another fun one. If you remember that kind of Viper-looking electric sports car that was a prototype was released, and then we never talked about electrification again.
Yep, so that was it.
Yep, that was it.
So the third item that's really occupying people's mind in this country is weather. There's certainly some weather extremes, whether we've got drought and wildfires in the Pacific Northwest, or extreme heat, or flash flooding. It's kind of affecting all of us. Even here in the Northeast, where we don't typically have those extremes, we've had some flash flooding and a lot of rain, which I'm sure the Pacific Northwest would die for. So anyway, we got a question related to weather, and then we'll move on. So Steve from Pensacola, Florida says, I wanted to know what car or options CR would recommend for those of us in hurricane zones. Keeping in mind, we would need to evacuate before or after a severe storm, and that you can get stuck in traffic for quite a while in the process. What would you say? Alex, I'm going to go to you first. Are there thoughts you have for a vehicle that would suit Steve or anyone in a hurricane zone?
Right. So, I mean, first off, you're not going to find any manufacturers advertising the, hurricane abilities of their vehicle per se, but just kind of thinking it through, I guess an off-road vehicle with elevated ground height and four-wheel drive and those types of things are, if you are going to be traveling through, deep water or anything like that in the hurricane situation, is going to help you out with traction. And then also just it being higher. You don't want your engine to be sucking in water or anything like that. So I guess what comes to mind for me is just a full-size pickup truck with four-wheel drive, elevated ground clearance. You could throw stuff in the back quickly if you needed to. And then to address the sitting in traffic part of it, they tend to have quite large fuel tanks for long cruising ranges. So kind of fills that bill too. So I would say any large or full-size pickup truck rather would probably fit the bill.
Yeah, and if you have to evacuate items, that might be a good thing too.
Right.
You'd have the space to do that. But Keith, we were saying it's not necessarily about necessarily what vehicle, but what to prep and be conscious of ahead of the storm.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is that a hurricane, unlike any other situation, unlike an earthquake or something, you can actually prepare for this in advance, and you kind of know when they're coming. You see them moving real slow on the screen on the radar, and just make sure that during hurricane season, no matter what you drive, that your tires are in good shape. Make sure the gas tank is full. Because the last thing you want is to run out of gas while, you're talking about, we've seen traffic jams, especially if you're on a peninsula and you're trying to get to the mainland. And there's one road in, one road out. You just want to make sure that especially if you're not driving as often, that your car will start, that the battery's good, because that's the last thing you need. All right, time to go, time to pack up. The car's all packed. And now the car won't start and you have to get it towed or jump started. And also just keep in mind that no matter what you're driving, even if you're in a full-size truck, if you see water, don't try and go through that because that ground clearance that you have might not be enough, and you could get pretty seriously hurt.
Yeah, don't wait too long. And we have a bunch of this stuff, about the standing water, et cetera, flooded vehicles up on consumerreports.org. And the other thought I had, and we talked about it, is kind of this hybrid electric. If there's a storm and you don't have to evacuate out, but you're looking at potentially power loss, hey, you can run your truck or your vehicle as a generator for a bit to power your house in an emergency situation. So that's the other thoughts I had of is kind of this new idea of letting your vehicle be a generator if indeed the storm isn't one you need to evacuate for, but it's certainly going to take some power away. So that was my thought as well. So again, I agree with you, Keith. It's a lot about just being ahead of it.
Yeah. There's some EV chargers that actually that can send power back from you. You don't have to get that truck if you want to. Awesome. But if you have an EV already, there are some chargers that can actually send power back to your house. And if you have an EV and you live in a hurricane prone area, make sure that you keep it charged,
right.
Ready to
Absolutely.
go.
Exactly.
Yep, great point.
It used to be just your flashlight. Now it's your car too. Yeah. Put batteries in your flashlight. So great advice. Great advice. Hopefully that's helpful. And to everybody who's in these extremes, be it the fires or the drought or the heat, we wish you well and stay safe. And again, get out when you have to. Moving on to From Our Track, we have our first impressions of the 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness Edition, kind of a new name for Subaru. So Alex, let's start with you. Did you spend some time in the Outback Wilderness? Again, this is one we rented from Subaru.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I spent a couple days driving it. And the market right now, off-road vehicles and this overlanding lifestyle and these types of things are very, it's very popular, very attractive to a lot of people. And even though Subaru is kind of already that outdoorsy, oriented brand, maybe a little less so than they used to be, I think they wanted something fresh to try to capture, some of those sales back, right? So basically they took their Outback, which is already pretty formidable off-road for what it is, and they gave it some features to make it even more capable. So they raised the ground clearance about a little less than an inch. They gave it all-terrain tires, skid plates, and then they did some mechanical changes, like they changed the final drive ratio to give it a little more torque at the wheels. Even changed the bumpers to change the approach and departure angles. So it's more than, it does look cool too. But it's more than, I think, just a graphics package and the look side of it. So, I when I was driving it around, I kind of like weird cars, and I feel like nowadays it's more difficult to find weird cars, and this is kind of as weird as it gets. It's this like off-roady trim of this mainstream model. It's lifted up. The tires look kind of chunky and weird inside the wheel wells, and you get this black cladding all over it. And when I was driving it around, it got a lot of looks and people asking what it was and that type of thing. So that's always fun. And I think, honestly, as far as how it drives, the best part about it is that it drove, at least in my experience, pretty much just like the regular Outback. You didn't notice a ton of difference from behind the wheel. The steering didn't feel weird with the tires. I couldn't even hear the all-terrain tires. It was just as quiet. The turbocharged 4-cylinder is pretty powerful and responsive. It's interesting that it's not the most expensive version of the Outback either. It's somewhere in the middle of the trim line. I would say the only thing to really keep an eye out for is that you do sacrifice some fuel economy, especially on the highway. And that's probably due to the lift and extra or more aerodynamic drag. And the tires also take away from that a little bit too.
Sounds like some weight too with all that cladding on there. Yeah, they added some weight to it. Keith, impressions? You like Subarus typically. Do you like the Wilderness?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who likes Subaru should like this car, mostly because it's going to print money for Subaru. These off-road trims don't cost that much for automakers to put on a couple of little extras, and they can not only add that value and increase that marginal profit on each vehicle, but they can also attract new buyers who might have thought that the Outback wasn't necessarily, in the right segment for them, or didn't look tough enough, or didn't look off-roady enough. And this whole idea of buying cars that look capable, obviously, the skid plate, things like that are going to give it a little bit more capability, but you're not going to be rock climbing in this thing. But we've seen other manufacturers do it too. Ford has the Timberline version now that debuted in the Explorer. There's their kind of funky off-roady RAV4s, and we're starting to see this from basically every manufacturer. Is they're trying to make a car for every person, a car for every buyer, and this just adds something new for Subaru. It's really in that popular segment, like you said, and I just think it's going to be a massive. Even if they don't sell 1 billion of them, it's going to make Subaru a lot of money.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, good profit with, like you say, inexpensive additions.
As far as we know, this is just the first Wilderness version, right? So, when I think about it, a Crosstrek Wilderness sounds pretty interesting, right? A little more rugged version of the Crosstrek, which is already, a little bit smaller than the Outback. So maybe that'll have some extra capability too. But yeah, I think Keith made a great point. This will be, a money printer for sure.
Well, Outback started as a trim level, and then it became its own thing. So who knows?
Yeah, you used to be able to get an Outback sedan, right?
Yeah, the SUS. I know someone who had one. It looked cool. Something.
I was thinking too that in this SUV world that Subaru really didn't have a midsize. So you have the Ascent and you have the Crosstrek, which is a little smaller. They don't really have like a midsize. And a lot of people still associate Outback with wagons, not SUVs. So maybe this is just them SUVifying, that was my word, the Outback to make it more appealing. And the other thought I had is just snow. Forget the off-roading part. Wouldn't it be nice to have just that little bit of extra either traction or clearance? So I do think, I agree with you, Keith. I think it'll be a popular car.
It's got that room between the Outback and the Forester for someone who thought one was just a little too, and just, it kind of fits there.
And adding to your comments, Jen, about snow and things like that, they did change what Subaru calls the X mode, which is, I think, originally supposed to be like an off-road mode, but basically it changes the way the traction control works and the way it brakes wheels when they lose traction. And supposedly with the Wilderness, it works at higher speeds, so maybe that could be more useful, when traveling on a snowy road. And whereas before the system would shut off over a certain speed, now it can work at higher speeds.
So stay tuned. We'll see what the first of the Wilderness brings on this popular vehicle. So before we move on, just a reminder about our Talking Cars donation program. As we've said, all of what we do, be it buying the products, testing the products, creating this show, comes from donations and members. And anything that you're able to give is always helpful. See cr.org/give talking cars if you're able to make a donation. And we much appreciate it. So moving on to your questions, again, a little bit of focus on the weather. We have a question from Ben in Sarasota, Florida. Take a listen.
It's July in Florida, and typically that means we've already had summer for 6 months, but luckily the heat has held out until now. That's got me wondering about my AC system and how to maintain it so it properly lasts. I haven't seen anything in the manual about what to do, and I was wondering if you guys thought that I needed to replace the fluid sometime in the future. If you would, let me know your thoughts. Thanks, and stay cool up in the Northeast.
So first of all, Ben, beautiful view there behind you. It doesn't look too hot in your video, but I bet it is in Sarasota, Florida. So I did reach out to our chief mechanic, John Ibbotson, as well as Jake, who used to work in HVAC, to ask them for what were the maintenance tips for AC? And the truth is, they said most current model AC units are sealed for life type units, and there's not a lot of maintenance to them. I certainly have been in vehicles where either the compressor stops working or they need a charge of Freon or whatever the coolant is in there. And it's inevitably when you need them the most, when it's 95 and humid. What they did say is there are ways to keep it running well. So with air conditioning comes moisture. So a couple of tips were before you shut the vehicle off, shut the AC unit down and just let the fans run through the vents to kind of dry out the vents themselves. The evaporator can get some condensation and moisture in it. Sometimes that manifests as kind of a musty smell into the cabin. You can buy a disinfectant, either an AC dedicated disinfectant or something like Lysol. Put the fans on low and actually spray the disinfectant into the plenum, which is the vents that are at the base of the windshield on the outside of the car. Let that disinfectant circulate through and kind of kill any bacteria or musty smells in the evaporator. At the same time, before you do that, you want to pull the cabin air filter. Pull it while you're doing the disinfecting, but then also replace it to keep air flowing well and free of kind of bacteria and contaminants into the cabin. Replace that as needed. It can be most of the time a DIY. They're not always easy to get to. Some of them are behind the glove box, but it's not difficult. Like it should be a DIY. Some of them are right on top of the engine, but others are not, or have it replaced if you'd rather. But, certainly if you see accumulating dirt on that cabin air filter, it's a good sign to change it. And it can help the AC work better. Our second question comes from David in Orange, California. Take a listen.
Hey, Talking Cars. I'm 63 and I still love performance cars. I recently purchased a 2021 Supra 3.0, which I love. As I've done with all my other cars, when I need to get something behind it in the garage, I've always turned the key to accessory without starting it, put the car in neutral, and roll it a couple of feet, then roll it back, cutting down on condensation building up in the oil, as I only drive the car about once a week. The Supra with a ZF transmission, as well as BMWs with ZF transmissions, won't allow the car to be put in neutral with the engine off. This seems really odd to me. I've heard you can jack up the car and disconnect something if you need to get into neutral. What if the car had to be towed on a flatbed? I'd like your thoughts on this. Thank you.
So clearly David is a car guy, loving his cars, but I agree, David, you got a tight garage and you may have to move forward. Keith, what's the advice on this ZF transmission for David in terms of getting a neutral?
Yes, so unfortunately, that's the situation that David has come across is correct. There is not another option. I looked into the second half of his question about towing, and this can happen when you buy a very unusual sports car that you might need. You can't just necessarily call up AAA and hope the first person who shows up with the truck is going to be able to take care of it. There actually is a special tool that is needed to disengage the transmission if the battery is dead. I looked at the instructions that are given to dealers for how to move a car, and there's a special tool. You have to get under the car, and you have to have the wheels chocked. It's not something you would want to do just to be able to get to storage that you have behind the vehicle. That's something you would want to do if you wouldn't want to do, but you might have to do in a real emergency. It's not like some cars where you just have to pull a tab or move something out of the way. So this is we have to when we fall in love with vehicles that are unusual, there are quirks that we have to overlook, and that is one with the Supra and the Z4.
Yeah, I will add to that. with this car, if you do have to move it and start it like this, like you're saying, frequently, I would just change the oil more often. I think the oil change interval on that car is 10,000 miles. And so maybe if you're starting it for a couple minutes at a time, a few times a week, like you're saying, maybe cut that in half or something like that, just to, get rid of some of that moisture. And otherwise, you could maybe they make these jacks that you can put under the tires, roll the car around, but that's probably not practical and definitely not a cheap solution. So I would say start it and just maybe change the oil a little more frequently.
And go for a drive.
Yeah, that too.
That's a great excuse. You just have to say, well, it's already started.
And drive it for a good amount of time to really let it heat up.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. David, if you need to get to those storage bins, great excuse. Take a drive. It's a wonderful car. So that was my answer too. Our next question comes from Tariq in Oakville, Ontario, Canada. And he asks, I am addicted to talking cars and became a CR member because of this show. Thank you, Tariq. I am looking to replace our current car with a newer model. We share vehicles with our 18-year-old son, who seems to be an overconfident driver given his limited experience. Aren't they all? Yes. So we would like to replace our current car with one that includes some autonomous features and are stuck between the 2021 Subaru Forester and Mazda CX-5. The Forester has better all-wheel drive, but less effective advanced safety as it's camera-based, while the CX-5 is a combination of radar and camera, but less impressive all-wheel drive. We get a lot of rain, snow, sleet in the greater Toronto area. Which one would you choose? Alex, I'm going to go to you first. I have some thoughts for Tariq, but I'm going to go to you first.
Okay. Well, I'll focus on the all-wheel drive portion of it. So he says that Subaru has a better all-wheel drive or more impressive all-wheel drive system. And I think traditionally that may have been true. And it is true in some ways where it's mechanically different and there's always power being sent to the rear wheels in a Subaru four-wheel drive system. But other competitive four-wheel drive systems like from Mazda are getting more and more impressive as the years go on. And I think unless you're going to be using the vehicle for some off-roading or something like that, similar to what we talked about with the Wilderness model, I think that both of these systems are going to do exactly what you need on the road in snowy or wet conditions. The Mazda, basically what they're doing is it's still an electronically controlled rear differential that activates as needed. But the way that the car senses when to activate the rear differential has just gotten so much better, and it's way more predictive than it is reactive these days. And I think that both are going to serve the purpose that you need.
I would say no matter what you choose, I remember back when I was a teenager and a teenage driver that I wanted to play with every single feature on the car and sometimes do it while I was driving because I was the greatest driver in the world and I was always in total control of the car, even if I was very obviously, looking back on it now, not in driving unsafely. So I would just be very, very careful. These are great features that you're talking about, things like automatic emergency braking, forward collision warning, pedestrian detection, blind spot warning. These are awesome. But what you don't necessarily want is for your overconfident teen to be playing around with adaptive cruise control and lane centering and using that as I can eat a sandwich. I can text while I'm driving because the car is. These systems are not foolproof, and Murphy's Law, something will go wrong when your son is not ready to come back to take control of the vehicle. So just keep in mind that there's the difference between those convenience systems and those safety systems. And the nice thing about the safety systems is that hopefully you never notice that they're there because you don't need them. So just keep that in mind. As far as the vehicles themselves, I'm with Alex, but I sense that Jen has something she's going to share that I want to hear.
Yeah, you do. And I think it's funny how you literally just wrapped around to our first segment of stick with the proven safety features, the forward collision warnings, the automatic emergency brakings, not necessarily on autonomous ones, the jury's still out on whether those are safety benefits. Mine was one, Two, I agree with Alex. I think you'll be very happy with either of these cars. And as you know, we create these best cars for young drivers list. Both of those vehicles are on there. And I applaud you, Tariq, for saying, hey, I need these features in this car to help back up my young, inexperienced driver. It's exactly how parents should be thinking. My thoughts, though, were more about what Tariq was saying about a camera/radar-based system being better than just a camera-based systems. And I'm not sure that's true. And I'm deferring back to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, the IIHS's ratings of these systems. And if you look, the camera-only based system on the Forester actually has higher ratings, more superior ratings, the highest rating the IIHS gives in all of the vehicle-to-vehicle scenarios and in the vehicle-to-pedestrian scenarios that they test, except for one where the dummy is moving parallel. The pedestrian dummy is parallel to the car, where it still scrubs off some speed. The CX-5 doesn't qualify for the forward collision warning points in those tests. And in some of the AEB tests for the pedestrian, it doesn't fail to avoid, it doesn't avoid a collision as the Subaru Forester does, even though it's a camera/radar-based system. So because the systems are playing off of one another, the radar and the camera, even in poor weather, which I think is what Tariq's getting at, that a camera-based system won't be able to see, I think you'll see in the CX-5, because they're using both pieces of logic, those systems may not work in that poor weather either. So because it's relying on both inputs. So don't make the assumption that it's because it has both. It's a better system. According to the IHS, the Forester may be better. Other things, Forester has fantastic visibility, where the CX-5 is a little bit more sloped. I really find that advantageous for any driver, particularly a new driver. Forester has a better road test score, but lesser reliability. Counter on the other, the CX-5 has a lesser road test score, but better reliability. So again, I think it comes down to preference. I love your logic, and I think you'll be happy with either car here. I'm not sure that helps you, but that's our input anyway. Tariq is probably like, oh gosh, they've given me so much. But moving on to our final question comes from David. I am considering buying a 2018 Chrysler Pacifica hybrid from a dealership that has marked down the price by several $1,000s, presumably because of an open recall that CR reported on in June of 2020. Should the facts that a fix has not been found 1 year later be a deal breaker for this car? What steps should I take to ensure my safety if I purchase this vehicle? And if I do go through with the purchase, will this recall affect its resale value? Keith, you did the reporting on this recall for the Pacifica, so I'm going to defer to you.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go backwards and start with, will this recall affect the resale value? So many cars have recalls, unless it's like a super famous one that only affected one vehicle. It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be an issue. However, I do want to talk about this specific recall. And it has to do with an auxiliary power outlet and water being able to access that power outlet and fires resulting from that. So this isn't like, oh, a label is wrong, or don't use the center seat for a child seat, use one of the outboard ones instead, which are some which we've seen. No, this is... the vehicle could catch fire. Now, there haven't been many cases of it, but it's a fairly serious recall. And David's right, there isn't a fix for it yet. There's a temporary fix, but until the full fix is done, Stellantis recommends consumers are advised to exercise the following precautions until the vehicle has the final repair completed. Do not park these vehicles inside of buildings or structures or near other vehicles. Additionally, keep liquids out of the back seat area, including but not limited to beverages, wet items, umbrellas, or bottled liquids that may leak. So if you're willing to put up with that, I'm still going to say not to buy this car, because CR and other organizations agree that cars with open recalls should not be able to be sold. Right now, a new car with an open recall can't be sold until that recall is fixed, but a used car can be sold. And we don't think that that's right, because It's easy to get a recall fixed. A used car lot, if they have a car that they got from auction that has an open recall, they can bring it to an authorized dealer and have that work done for free. That's part of selling a car is making sure that there aren't any safety defects that haven't been corrected on it. And if I were buying a car, obviously I would check for myself, but other folks don't necessarily do that, and they shouldn't be put at a safety disadvantage. So as a blanket rule, don't buy a car with an open recall. It's unfortunate because this is a car I actually really, really like. I think it's a really cool car. Maybe give it a few months, because I'm really hoping that this recall will be, the situation will be fixed. But as of right now, from what I've seen from NHTSA, there still isn't a full repair for this vehicle. So keep an eye on that, and good luck.
It also sounds like even when the part does come, it's a rather extensive repair to do. And, it's hard whether you already own the car and you've got this recall that can't be fixed because the parts aren't out, or you're in, like David, thinking of buying it. There are some great tools when you're buying a used car. You can put in the VIN number, find out if recalls have been done yet on that car. So, there's an app that NHTSA has. We have recall trackers on our site for sure at consumerreports.org. And it's very helpful to determining. And I would encourage anybody looking used to make sure, see what the recall status is on a vehicle they're considering. So that will do it for this episode. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Keep your questions, keep your video clips coming. talkingcars@icloud.com. And we will see you next week.